welcome to our next module. We're going to be diving into all things gut health and digestion. This is such a crucial part to detoxification, but also just our overall health. Our gut is often referred to as our second brain, and that's because our gut microbes influence so much of our thoughts, our neurotransmitters, different processes within the body, our metabolism, our hormones, how we detoxify, so many different things. So it's so important that we're addressing gut dysbiosis, we're learning how our gut functions, and just getting our gut health in line and in an optimal state. So our gut influences how we digest food, it influences disease, mental health, inflammation, immunity, and even nutrient absorption. So our gut actually contains an entire ecosystem of microbes, and we have different kinds of microbes. So we have our commensals, and we also have pathogenic. So our commensal bacteria is a bacteria that is working for us. It's keeping everything in check. It's keeping the pathogens from becoming overgrown. And these are the bacteria that we want to be feeding with fiber and probiotics and fermented foods, and we're going to get into all of that. Whereas the pathogenic is exactly what it sounds like. These are pathogens. And our pathogenic bacteria can cause disease. Now, we don't want to have zero pathogenic bacteria. We want to have some pathogenic bacteria because it helps keep the commensals strong. We just want them to be balanced. We don't want any of the pathogenic bacteria becoming too high or too strong. We just want to keep that equilibrium between the two. So we want to create a very resilient ecosystem of commensal bacteria. So to do this is going to be a combination of diversity and richness. So diversity is important because we want our commensal bacteria to have many different kinds of bacteria. And the way that we can help with our diversity is to eat a very varied diet, to avoid a whole bunch of gut stressors, especially antibiotics. And we're going to get into different gut stressors in a moment. And then also increase probiotic foods. That's going to be like our fermented foods, our kombuchas, our yogurts, our pickled vegetables, all of those kinds of things. Now we also want to focus on richness of these commensal bacteria. We want a variety of different kinds of commensal bacteria, but then we also want the levels of them to be high. And that is something that comes down to our daily nutrition, our daily habits. A big thing here is going to be getting lots of prebiotics through our diet, and then again, also focusing a lot on fermented foods. And that combination of the diversity plus the richness is going to give us that strong resiliency. Some of the gut stressors that we want to be avoiding that are going to negatively impact our commensal and healthy bacteria within our gut are going to be, the biggest one's going to be antibiotics. Now, antibiotics are life-saving, they're necessary in some circumstances, but the overuse of antibiotics is what's killing our gut bacteria, and it can take up to 2 years for the gut to fully recover from just one dose of antibiotics. So if you're someone who has lots of ear infections or sinus infections or any type of like skin infections where you're taking an antibiotic on a yearly basis, if you take an antibiotic for an acute infection and maybe 6 to 12 months goes by and then you take another one, your gut hasn't even fully recovered from the first round. And then think of how many antibiotics you've been on like over a lifetime. So I'm not saying never take them. I understand that they're important for some acute scenarios, but we don't want to be overusing them and we want to be avoiding them whenever possible. All right, the next one is alcohol. So alcohol damages the tight junctions that are within our gut. So it causes intestinal permeability, something that we talked about beforehand. So it creates those little microscopic holes in our intestines that allow for food to seep through. And this is what ends up activating our immune system to create antibodies against foods that we're eating. And this is what leads to food sensitivities. So alcohol is a big one. We want to basically eliminate it. I know that can be a challenge for some, but reducing it as much as possible is going to be really important for just the integrity of your gut lining. Lack of movement is also a gut stressor. We want to be able to get up and move throughout the day, making sure that we're exercising, walking, stretching, giving our organs space. Posture is an also really important one for our digestive organs because that affects the vagus nerve, which is we're going to get into when we get into the gut-brain axis, but slouching can actually have a really negative impact on our digestion as well. Also, lack of sleep is actually going to slow our motility, which again affects our digestion and our elimination process, which is so important for detoxification. If we're not eliminating at least 1 to 2 times a day, a lot of those toxins that are getting pushed into our digestive tract from our liver and our bile, they're just going to end up recirculating and reabsorbing within the gut. So binders can help with that, but we need to actually be excreting all the toxins that we are putting into the digestive tract. Diet, this is going to be an important one. So obviously we're going to get into diet and nutrition, the things that we need to be eliminating, foods that we should be focusing on. But things like processed foods, processed sugars, refined sugars, lots of different additives within packaged foods, these are going to be really harmful to our gut overall. And lots of refined sugars actually feed the pathogenic bacteria, so it's not really healthy, especially for different strands of candida within the gut. So we're going to talk about nutrition a little bit in one of the later lessons and modules, but just know that our diet has a massive effect on our gut microbiota. And this is something that can actually change very quickly. Studies show that even within 4 days, it can start altering our gut microbiome. So this is something that we can actually see changes pretty quickly. And the last one I want to share is stress. So we're going to talk about stress when we get to the nervous system module a lot and talk a lot about the vagus nerve and parasympathetic activation. But stress can divert blood flow away from the digestive organs, not allowing us to digest our food properly, because your body, when it thinks it's in danger, it's not going to be focused on digesting food. It's actually going to be like, we don't have the capacity to do this right now. We need to bring blood flow to our muscles so that we can actually run and move and get away from whatever danger that we are in. So managing stress is so important for optimal gut health and digestion. And sometimes even before changing diet alone, just addressing the stress factor, I've seen a lot of people see major improvements here. So before we get into nutrition and talk about what we're eating, we need to be talking about how we're eating, because this is so important for how we're breaking down and assimilating and absorbing all of our nutrients, because we are not what we eat, we are what we can break down, absorb, and assimilate. So we could be eating the healthiest, most varied, perfect diet, but if we don't have adequate enzyme production, if we don't have adequate stomach acid, if we're not chewing our food properly, if we're not eating in a relaxed state, we're not going to be absorbing any of these high quality nutrients that our body is craving. So I want you to think about what typical settings you're usually eating in. Are you usually eating in your car, on the go? Are you eating at your desk at work? Sometimes I'm guilty of this one. I know it's hard. Are you eating alone? Are you eating with family? Are you multitasking? Are you watching TV? Are you scrolling on your phone? What does your eating setting typically look like? So I mentioned this earlier, but one of the most important things is making sure that we have good posture while we're eating to allow our digestive organs the space to actually do their job. This is also important for the vagus nerve, which affects our digestion as well. So making sure that we're not slouching while we're eating, and making sure that we're not slouching throughout the day either. So posture is going to be really important here. Next, we don't want to be eating rapidly. We want to take our time when we're eating. So it's really important that we're chewing our food 20 to 30 times, because this is where digestion starts. There are actually enzymes in our saliva that help break down our food before they even get to the stomach. If you're not taking the time to actually chew your food 20 to 30 times before you swallow, you're missing out on that digestive piece. There's going to be less nutrients available for your body to absorb if we're not starting that process. Next, we want to make sure that we're not jumping into meal times when we're stressed or frazzled. So if you're someone who is like eating in the car on the way to work, or if you're eating during a work meeting, see if there's a way that you can find a more dedicated space for your meal timing. Think of this more as a ritual or some time for yourself. We don't want to be eating in a stress state, because like I said earlier, eating in a stress state is not going to allow us to digest our food properly, because our body thinks that we're still in danger. We're not gonna be able to divert blood flow to our stomach organs so that we can actually do this process to completion. Trying to avoid screens while we're eating as well, because this is gonna take away from the mindfulness factor. We're not gonna be able to pay attention to how much we're chewing our food, just acknowledging the food that we're eating, creating that space to really just relax and take some time for yourself. Another one is reaching for food when we're not physically hungry. One tip that I like to give to all my clients is if you're someone who snacks often and you don't feel like it's serving you well, like some people do have to eat pretty often depending on the state of their adrenals and their hormonal health. It's really just going to depend on a lot of different factors. But if you feel like you're someone who snacks when you're not hungry, one really good mindfulness tip is if you are craving something very specific, like a protein bar or chocolate or something like that, it's probably a craving and not true hunger. Because if it's true hunger, your body's gonna be craving a multitude of different nutrients. You're gonna be craving carbohydrates and fats and proteins and hydration. So that's a big thing there. Another thing is sometimes we can feel hungry when we are actually thirsty. Maybe we're not properly hydrated. So if you are noticing that you're wanting to snack like an hour after you just ate a very balanced meal, which we'll talk about how to balance our meals in the nutrition module, it could be dehydration because you shouldn't be feeling hungry an hour after a meal. That's not true hunger. So taking a look at all these things is really important for optimizing our digestion, but there's also some other things that we can look at from a more chemical level. So one of the most common things that I see clients with heartburn taking antacids. So antacids actually deplete our stomach acid, which is one of the worst things that we can be doing for our digestion. Our stomach acid is so important and so crucial for breaking down especially high protein meals. It's important for enzyme production, and it's also our body's defense against pathogens in our food. So this can make us susceptible to more of those pathogenic bacteria that can make it down into our intestines and affecting our gut microbiome as a whole. So oftentimes we think that heartburn is actually from too much stomach acid, but realistically, usually low stomach acid can cause this because it affects the sphincter between our stomach and our esophagus, and it's not like fully closing. Doing a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a full glass of water, we always want to dilute it because taking this straight apple cider vinegar can burn our tissues and be really bad for our teeth. So making sure you're diluting it. Lemon, you can also add some lemon in there as well. That can help with the heartburn and just helping to increase stomach acid overall. One of the things that can deplete stomach acid also that's not a medication is just stress in general. I see a lot of low stomach acid in clients who have a lot of nutrient deficiencies, and this can be something that can be looked at with a gut microbiome test as well. So if it's something where you feel like you're having a lot of digestive issues, we can do a gut microbiome test and we can look at your ecosystem of your gut. So we can look at your pathogens and your commensals, and we can also take a look at what else is going on within your digestive organs, like how is your enzyme production. But if you don't want to do testing, like I said, there's things that we can do to improve digestion. One of those things is apple cider vinegar diluted in water. So I don't recommend doing this with every single meal. But if you have a harder time digesting larger meals or especially protein heavy meals, I would do that with the largest meal of the day, especially dinner, because our hydrochloric acid is actually highest in the morning. So it's actually the best time to be doing a high protein meal in the morning because we're going to be able to break it down the best. Another thing is doing digestive bitters. So eating any bitter foods is going to help stimulate the secretion of enzymes and hydrochloric acid or stomach acid. So you can do bitters just out of the tincture, diluted in water like 15 minutes before meals. So I like to actually drink this while I'm making dinner. It's really good too with some squeezed citrus in there, like some orange. Or you can also take a digestive enzyme. A lot of enzymes on the market also contain HCl. You can get an enzyme that just has digestive enzymes to help you break down certain nutrients. You can also get digestive enzyme capsules that have the enzymes to help break down the nutrients, plus the hydrochloric acid also added in there. So I'll link some brands below on some ones that I like. Again, I wouldn't do these every single meal by no means, but definitely with like larger meals. So if you want to do it with dinner, and you also want to eat it right at the beginning of a meal time. So literally right when you're taking your first bite of food, that's when you should take the enzyme supplement. Another really important thing to note here for digestion and breaking down our nutrients is how we are hydrating. So we want to be hydrating between our meals first thing in the morning, but we never want to be drinking tons of water while we're eating our meals. We also don't want to be drinking a lot of water right after our meals. It might sound weird because we're so used to ordering a drink with dinner. It's really important that we don't do that because that water is actually going to dilute our stomach acid and our enzymes. And we don't want that. We want those things to be concentrated so that we can break down our food properly. So with all these different tips in mind and things that affect our digestion, I think it's so important to just keep a general food log or a food diary of not only what you're eating, but just how you were eating. What supplements did you take? What was the environment that you were eating in? Did you notice that you were eating really quickly in a stress state? How did you feel after? Just to start taking note of these different things throughout the day, because it's really going to help you pinpoint, okay, where am I lacking and where can I improve?